Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to our Bible in a Year reading plan. I am Shanique, and thank you so much for tuning in and for joining us as we spend time in God's Word this year. Now, currently, we are reading the Bible through in a year from Genesis to Revelation. So if you'd like to join us, it's certainly not too late. You can join us. You can find the reading plan that we're currently using in the description box below. Now, if you're a regular listener, thank you so much for tuning in and for joining us each and every day and for deep diving into God's Word with us. Now, if you're a new listener, I want to encourage you just to hit that subscribe button and to subscribe so you'll be notified whenever we release a new Bible in a Year reading plan video. Now, before we dive into today's audio Bible reading, I just wanted to share my commentary based on today's reading. Now, as I read, chapter 18, verse 9 to 14 really stood out to me, and I'll read it for you. And it says, when you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not imitate the detestable customs of those nations. No one among you is to sacrifice his son or daughter in the fire, practice divination, tell fortunes, interpret omens, practice sorcery, cast spells, consult a medium or a spiritist, or inquire of the dead. Everyone who does these acts is detestable to the Lord. And the Lord your God is driving out the nations before you because of these detestable acts. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. Though these nations you are about to drive out listen to fortune tellers and diviners, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do this. And as I read that, I was reminded of the importance of discernment in the choices that we make and the influences that we allow into our lives. And as I thought about that, do you know what I thought about? I thought about Halloween. I know Halloween, it's a hot button topic, but I want to just address that just for a little bit. Now, in a season where darkness is often celebrated, I want to encourage us to be beacons of light, to engage in activities that reflect God's love and grace, right? Now, on the blog, I do have some resources that dives a little deeper into Halloween. Should you or shouldn't you celebrate it? It's up to you. But I'd like to provide some facts on this, and I think you'll find this article very enlightening. However, I wanted to dive into some Christian alternatives to Halloween that I think you could explore. And the first one is this. Have you ever considered, instead of costume parties and haunted house events, why not invite your neighbors and kids over for refreshments, family games, and age-appropriate Bible study on Halloween, where you get to share a story from the Bible combating some of the ideas associated with Halloween? Now, there is an awesome book called Bizarre Halloween Bible Stories that you can check out, as well as if you're familiar with the website Teach Sunday School, they have an awesome Halloween lesson pack as well that you can check out, and it's called Monsters of the Bible. So please do check that out, and you can find the link to that in the description box below. Also, here's another option that you could explore, a Halloween pumpkin purr. Now, this would involve carving pumpkins. It's a family-friendly activity, right? That is done in the fall season. However, instead of carving scary objects, why not use it as an opportunity to point your kids to Jesus and to teach them how to pray, right? And again, you can find a link to this resource where you can learn more about the pumpkin prayer in the link below. How about the Halloween light party? Now, a light party is all about being a light on one of the darkest nights, right? Now, there's a blogger called Timberly at Living Our Priorities, and she basically does this every year where she opens up her home to the community, she plays gospel jams, and she hands out candy while offering to pray for those who are interested, right? It's a wonderful opportunity to to get to know your neighbors as well as to pray for members of your community and teach them about what it is that you actually believe. Now, some churches also organize community events known as trunk or treats. It's a great way to get to know the people in your community, as well as have a fun and safe way for the kids to trick or treat. So typically, you would decorate your trunk to fit a theme, like, for example, Noah's Ark. In addition to treats, you could display scripture, hand out coloring pages, as well as invite visitors to your church program, right? The details of this is totally up to you. I know growing up, I was a big fan of, Harry Potter and Charmed and Twitches. And maybe you've seen some of those movies and series, right? Where magic was a central theme. And it was rather fascinating, right? To see the spells being cast and just to be able to experience a virtual reality that wasn't norm in everyday life, right? And I was always of the impression that, hey, it was just a movie, totally harmless, right? I knew what was reality and there wasn't any harm in being entertained, right? You know, surely there could be nothing wrong with, dressing up in cute costumes and doing trick or treat, right? Checking out the local haunted house, bringing out the Netflix and watching scary movies with friends. It's all harmless fun, right? However, let's get back to this text for today. It says, though these nations you're about to drive out listen to fortune tellers and diviners, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do this, right? So it wasn't something that the Lord was pleased with. Now, as I mentioned earlier at the start of this episode, I do have an article that dives into what does Halloween mean in the Bible and is this sin? And it goes into a little bit more detail on this topic, as well as provide some options if you choose to celebrate Halloween. I encourage you to check it out below. That being said, I think it's time for us to dive into today's episode. We'll be reading from Deuteronomy chapter 16 to 19, and it'll be read from the New American Standard Bible.
Deuteronomy 16, the feasts of Passover, of weeks, and of booths. Observe the month of Abib and celebrate the Passover to the Lord your God, for in the month of Abib the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. You shall sacrifice the Passover to the Lord your God from the flock and the herd, in the place where the Lord chooses to establish his name. You shall not eat leavened bread with it. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread with it, the bread of affliction. For you came out of the land of Egypt in a hurry, so that you will remember the day when you came out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. For 7 days no leaven shall be seen with you in your entire territory, and none of the meat which you sacrifice on the evening of the first day shall be left overnight until the morning. You are not allowed to sacrifice the Passover in any of your towns which the Lord your God is giving you, but only at the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name. You shall sacrifice the Passover in the evening at sunset, at the time that you came out of Egypt. You shall cook and eat it in the place which the Lord your God chooses. In the morning you are to return to your tents. For 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a festive assembly to the Lord your God. You shall do no work on it. You shall count 7 weeks for yourself. You shall begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the standing grain. Then you shall celebrate the Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God with a voluntary offering of your hand in a proportional amount, which you shall give just as the Lord your God blesses you. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you, your son and your daughter, and your male and female slaves, and the Levite who is in your town, and the stranger, the orphan, and the widow who are in your midst, at the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name. You shall also remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall be careful and comply with these statutes. You shall celebrate the Feast of Booths for 7 days when you have gathered in from your threshing floor and your wine vat, and you shall rejoice in your feast, you, your son and your daughter, and your male and female slaves, and the Levite, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow who are in your towns. For 7 days you shall celebrate a feast to the Lord your God in the place which the Lord chooses, because the Lord your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the work of your hands, so that you will be altogether joyful. 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the Lord your God at the place which he chooses, at the feast of unleavened bread, at the feast of weeks, and at the feast of booths, and they are not to appear before the Lord empty-handed. Everyone shall give as he is able, in accordance with the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. You shall appoint for yourself judges and officers in all your towns which the Lord your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not distort justice, you shall not show partiality, and you shall not accept a bribe, because a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and distorts the words of the righteous. Justice and only justice you shall pursue, so that you may live and possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not plant for yourself an Asherah of any kind of tree beside the altar of the Lord your God, which you shall make for yourself. And you shall not set up for yourself a memorial stone, which the Lord your God hates. Deuteronomy 17 Administration of Justice. You shall not sacrifice to the Lord your God an ox or a sheep which has a blemish or any defect, for that is a detestable thing to the Lord your God. If there is found in your midst, in any of your towns which the Lord your God is giving you, a man or a woman who does what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, by violating his covenant, and that person has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun, the moon, or any of the heavenly lights, which I have commanded not to do, and if it is reported to you, and you have heard about it, then you shall investigate thoroughly. And if it is true and the report is trustworthy that this detestable thing has been done in Israel, then you are to bring out to your gates that man or woman who has done this evil deed, that is, the man or the woman, and you shall stone them to death. On the testimony of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, the condemned shall be put to death. He shall not be put to death on the testimony of only 1 witness. The hands of the witnesses shall be first against him too. Put him to death, and afterward the hands of all the people. So you shall eliminate the evil from your midst. If a case is too difficult for you to decide, between one kind of homicide or another, between one kind of lawsuit or another, and between one kind of assault or another, that are cases of dispute in your courts, then you shall arise and go up to the place which the Lord your God chooses. So you shall come to the Levitical priests or the judge who is in office in those days, and you shall inquire of them, and they will declare to you the verdict. Then you shall act in accordance with the terms of the verdict which they declare to you from that place which the Lord chooses, and you shall be careful to act in accordance with everything that they instruct you to do. In accordance with the terms of the law about which they instruct you, and in accordance with the verdict which they tell you, you shall act. You shall not turn aside from the word which they declare to you, to the right or the left. But the person who acts insolently by not listening to the priest who stands there to serve the Lord your God, nor to the judge, that person shall die. So you shall eliminate the evil from Israel. Then all the people will hear and be afraid, and will not act insolently again. When you enter the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and you take possession of it and live in it, and you say, I will appoint a king over me like all the nations who are around me, you shall in fact appoint a king over you whom the Lord your God chooses. One from among your countrymen you shall appoint as king over yourselves. You may not put a foreigner over yourselves, anyone who is not your countryman. In any case, he is not to acquire many horses for himself, nor shall he make the people return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said to you, you shall never again return that way. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, so that his heart does not turn away, nor shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. Now it shall come about, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write for himself a copy of this law on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he will learn to fear the Lord his God, by carefully following all the words of this law and these statutes, so that his heart will not be haughty toward his countrymen, and that he will not turn away from the commandment to the right or the left, so that he and his sons may live long in his kingdom in the midst of Israel. Deuteronomy 18 portion for the Levites. The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall not have a portion or inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's offerings by fire and his property. They shall not have an inheritance among their countrymen. The Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them. Now this shall be the priest's portion from the people, from those who offer a sacrifice, either an ox or a sheep. They shall give the priest the shoulder, the two cheeks, and the stomach. You shall give him the first fruits of your grain, your new wine, and your oil, and the first fleece of your sheep. For the Lord your God has chosen him and his sons from all your tribes to stand to serve in the name of the Lord always. Now if a Levite comes from any of your towns throughout Israel where he resides, and he comes whenever he desires to the place which the Lord chooses, then he shall serve in the name of the Lord his God, like all his fellow Levites who stand there before the Lord. They shall eat equal portions, except for what they receive from the sale of their fathers' estates. Spiritism forbidden. When you enter the land which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to imitate the detestable things of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one who uses divination, a soothsayer, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who casts a spell, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who consults the dead. For whoever does these things is detestable to the Lord, and because of these detestable things the Lord your God is going to drive them out before you. You are to be blameless before the Lord your God. For these nations which you are going to dispossess, listen to soothsayers and diviners, but as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do so. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your countrymen. To him you shall listen. This is in accordance with everything that you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, saying, Do not let me hear the voice of the Lord my God again, and do not let me see this great fire any more, or I will die. And the Lord said to me, They have spoken well. I will raise up for them a prophet from among their countrymen like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them everything that I command him. And it shall come about that whoever does not listen to my words which he speaks in my name, I myself will require it of him. But the prophet who speaks a word presumptuously in my name, a word which I have not commanded him to speak, or which he speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, How will we recognize the word which the Lord has not spoken? When the prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, and the thing does not happen or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You are not to be afraid of him. Deuteronomy 19 Cities of Refuge. When the Lord your God cuts off the nations whose land the Lord your God is giving you, and you dispossess them and settle in their cities and in their houses, you shall set aside for yourself 3 cities in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you to possess. You shall prepare the roads for yourself, and divide into 3 regions the territory of your land, which the Lord your God will give you as an inheritance, so that anyone who commits manslaughter may flee there. Now this is the case of the one who commits manslaughter, who may flee there and live, when he kills his friend unintentionally, not hating him previously, as when a person goes into the forest with his friend to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, and the iron head slips off the handle and strikes his friend so that he dies, he may flee to one of these cities and live. Otherwise, the avenger of blood might pursue him in the heat of his anger, and overtake him because the way is long, and take his life, though he was not sentenced to death since he had not hated him previously. Therefore I command you, saying, You shall set aside for yourself 3 cities. And if the Lord your God enlarges your territory, just as he has sworn to your fathers, and gives you all the land that he promised to give your fathers, if you carefully follow all of this commandment which I am commanding you today, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in his ways always, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourself, besides these 3. So innocent blood will not be shed in the midst of your land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and guilt for bloodshed will not be on you. But if there is a person who hates his neighbor, and waits in ambush for him, and rises up against him, and strikes him so that he dies, and he flees to one of these cities, then the elders of his city shall send men and take him from there, and hand him over to the avenger of blood, so that he may die. You shall not pity him, but you shall eliminate the guilt for the bloodshed of the innocent from Israel, so that it may go well for you. Laws of landmark and testimony. You shall not displace your neighbor's boundary marker, which the ancestors have set, in your inheritance which you will inherit in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. A single witness shall not rise up against a person regarding any wrongdoing or any sin that he commits. On the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter shall be confirmed. If a malicious witness rises up against a person to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both people who have the dispute shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who will be in office in those days. And the judges shall investigate thoroughly, and if the witness is a false witness and he has testified against his brother falsely, then you shall do to him just as he had planned to do to his brother. So you shall eliminate the evil from among you. And the rest of the people will hear and be afraid, and will never again do such an evil thing among you. So you shall not show pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, and foot for foot.